The Galactic Forum's grand chamber buzzed with the usual cacophony of translator modules, mechanical appendages, and the occasional psychic projection. As diplomatic liaison for the Zorasian Confederacy, I, Razak Voon, had spent 12 standard cycles navigating this political quagmire where 247 species attempted to coexist without killing each other. Most days, that counted as a rousing success. Today was not most days. The Terran delegation wishes to address the forum, announced High Arbiter Pelmu, her 4 eye stalks swiveling toward the human section, which had been suspiciously quiet all morning. Ambassador Marcus Wright stood up. For a species lacking extra limbs, bioluminescence, or even basic telepathy, humans had an uncanny ability to command attention. The chamber fell silent. The United Earth Coalition hereby announces its withdrawal from the Galactic Forum, effective immediately. You could have heard a Tindarian microspore drop. Then chaos erupted. Point of order, shouted Representative Graxlin of the Hive Collective. The bylaws require 6 standard rotations notice before, bylaws be damned, Wright interrupted, something humans were irritatingly prone to doing. We're leaving. We're keeping exactly 1 ship at the outer marker for communication purposes only. The rest of our fleet departs in 3 hours. I exchanged glances with my assistant, Nebel. 1 ship? 1? Even the primitive Vortian cluster maintained at least a dozen diplomatic vessels. The High Arbiter's voice sack inflated with indignation. Ambassador Wright, this is highly irregular. If Earth has grievances, there are proper channels. This isn't a negotiation, Wright said, smiling in that peculiar human way that never quite reached his eyes. It's a courtesy notification. Across the chamber, I noticed Ambassador Quovlak of the Drellian Empire not even attempting to hide his pleasure. The Drellians had been pushing for human exclusion since they joined, claiming the primitive mammals weren't ready for galactic society. Well, good riddance, Quovlak rumbled through his translator. Perhaps now we can progress without their constant disruptions. Several species chittered or bubbled in agreement. Wright didn't seem bothered. He simply gathered his datapad and turned to leave, then paused. A final word of advice. When the darkness comes from the void between the Cygnus Arm and Perseus, don't bother calling us. We tried to warn you. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Demanded the Arbiter. Wright laughed, an unsettling sound in this context. Not at all. Just recognizing that some lessons can only be learned firsthand. Farewell, colleagues. As the human delegation filed out, I couldn't shake a growing unease. In 12 cycles, I'd learned one reliable truth: humans were unpredictable, stubborn, and occasionally brilliant. They didn't abandon things without reason. What do you suppose that was about? Nebel asked, his dorsal fins fluttering anxiously. I don't know, I admitted, watching the chamber doors close behind the last human. But I have a feeling we're going to regret finding out. Hashtag only 1 ship? The galaxy watched in terror as humans abandoned the forum. Hashtag part 2, the revelation 6 standard months after the human exodus, and the forum continued spinning on as if nothing had changed. Well, almost nothing. 3rd outpost this week, muttered Nebel, sliding a data crystal across my desk. Complete communications blackout in the Taurus sector. I, Razak Voon, sighed through my breathing spiracles. Let me guess. The forum's official explanation is sunspot activity, Nebel finished, his dorsal fins trembling with suppressed frustration. On 3 different stars. Simultaneously. How convenient. I rotated the crystal between my digits, watching light refract through its lattice. And everyone's buying this garbage? The Drellians proposed a motion to classify these incidents as routine cosmic phenomena. Passed with 86% approval. Of course it did. The forum excelled at one thing: pretending problems didn't exist until they exploded in their collective faces. That night, I did something borderline treasonous. I used my diplomatic clearance to access the Zorasian military database. 3 hours of searching revealed a disturbing pattern. The anomalies weren't random, they formed a straight line, heading directly toward the Forum's central worlds. The next morning, I cornered High Arbiter Pelmu after session. With respect, Arbiter, these incidents match exactly what Ambassador Wright mentioned. Something coming from between the Cygnus and Perseus arms. Pelmu's eye stalks retracted slightly, the equivalent of an eye roll in her species. Liaison Voon, are you suggesting we base galactic security protocols on vague human parting remarks? Not vague if they're coming true. Look at this trajectory analysis. Pelmu glanced at my data pad with 4 simultaneous blinks of dismissal. The Drellian scientific consensus is politically motivated nonsense, I interrupted, knowing I'd pay for that later. This conversation is over. Pelmu slithered away, radiating disapproval through her pheromone glands. 2 days later, it became harder to ignore. The Brontari Collective Central AI went completely offline. The Mecanian fleet's navigation systems failed during routine maneuvers, causing 3 capital ships to collide. The prestigious Galaxium Bank lost 60 trillion credits in a system-wide crash. Something was coming. Something that consumed technology. From my office window in the Forum's tallest spire, I could just make out a tiny speck against the starfield, the solitary human vessel, maintaining its silent vigil at the edge of Forum space. Watching. Waiting. They knew, I whispered to the empty room. Those insufferable primates actually knew. The question was, what else did they know that we didn't? #only one ship. The galaxy watched in terror as humans abandoned the Forum #Part 3, the crisis. The Drellian homeworld went dark on stardate 4587.3. Not just communications, everything. One moment, a thriving civilization of 30 billion souls, the next, a black sphere engulfing the entire planet, growing larger by the second. Within days, similar spheres appeared near 3 other core worlds. The Forum chamber, once a showcase of pompous civility, devolved into something resembling a Vortian panic den. Order! I demand order, screamed High Arbiter Pelmu, her voice sac nearly rupturing with the effort. Nobody listened. The Mecanians were threatening to deploy quantum warheads. The Zorasian admiral, my direct superior, was ordering our fleet into defensive formations. The Brontari representatives had simply disappeared, presumably fleeing to whatever hidey-hole their species maintained for such catastrophes. We need to contact the humans, I told Nebel as we hurried down the corridor. How? The Forum's outgoing communications are jammed. I grinned, revealing all 3 rows of my diplomatic teeth. Who said anything about using Forum channels? 3 hours later, after bribing a maintenance drone and crawling through uncomfortably narrow access tubes, I reached the old emergency transmitter station. The tech was practically antique, predating the standard quantum network. Primitive, but perhaps that's why it might still work. This is Liaison Razak Voon to Terran Vessel Vigilant Hope. Requesting immediate communication. Forum space under direct attack. Unknown entity. Repeat, unknown entity consuming worlds. Static crackled for 30 agonizing seconds. Then, Liaison Voon. This is Captain Aisha Patel of the Vigilant Hope. We've been expecting your call. You knew this would happen? First detected 17 years ago. We tried sharing our findings with the Forum Science Directorate. They laughed us out of the chamber. My stomach's churned with bitter realization. The humans withdrew because nobody would listen. So we prepared alone. When I returned to the Forum chamber with Captain Patel's holographic projection, the chaos stopped instantly. The void spheres are non-biological entities that feed on energy, explained Patel, her hologram glowing blue against the chamber's dim emergency lighting. We've spent years developing countermeasures. Why should we trust humans now? Demanded the Drellian vice commander, grief and rage making his translator glitch. Patel's expression remained neutral. Because Vigilant Hope isn't just a communication vessel. It's a command center for our entire defense fleet. As if on cue, the massive view screen behind the Arbiter's platform flickered to life, showing hundreds, no, thousands, of human warships decloaking throughout Forum space. Now, said Patel, shall we discuss terms of assistance? Only one ship? The galaxy watched in terror as humans abandoned the Forum Part 4, the Reckoning. The Forum chamber, which hours ago had been a scene of panicked chaos, now sat in stunned silence as the tactical display showed thousands of human vessels taking up defensive positions around threatened worlds. One ship, I muttered to Nebel. They said they were leaving one ship. Technically correct, replied Captain Patel's hologram, her hearing apparently better than we'd assumed. Vigilant Hope is indeed the only diplomatic vessel we maintained. The others are purely military. High Arbiter Pelmu's eye stalks drooped in what might have been embarrassment. Captain, the Forum acknowledges that we may have underestimated the human position on this matter. You think? Patel raised an eyebrow. While your scientists were publishing papers mocking our primitive paranoia, we were building phase-shifted energy dampeners and void-resistant armor plating. The tactical display zoomed in on one of the human vessels engaging a void sphere. The ship fired what looked like glowing harpoons that somehow penetrated the blackness, then pumped something into it. The sphere shuddered and began to shrink. We've studied these entities for nearly 2 decades, explained Patel. They feed on energy. We've developed weapons that reverse their absorption fields, essentially giving them indigestion. The Drellian vice commander, who had lost his entire homeworld, stepped forward. We will contribute our remaining fleet to this effort. One by one, the Forum species pledged their forces to the counterattack. Within hours, a combined armada of unprecedented size assembled. The humans, remarkably, shared their technology without hesitation. The battle raged for 7 standard days. We lost 17 major vessels and countless fighters. But by the end, not a single void sphere remained in Forum space. In the aftermath, I found myself sharing a peculiar human beverage called whiskey with Ambassador Wright, who had returned for the emergency session. You could have said, "I told you so," I noted, my speech slightly slurred from the potent liquid. Wright chuckled. Would that have helped? No, but it might have felt good. Know what feels better? Not watching civilizations die because they're too proud to listen. I raised my glass in acknowledgement. To humans, the galaxy's most infuriating saviors. I'll drink to that. As we signed the new Human Forum Defense Pact the next day, I couldn't help but reflect on our colossal misjudgment. We'd mocked humans for their short lifespans, their emotional decision-making, their bizarre fixation on preparing for worst-case scenarios. Turns out those flaws had saved us all. In 12 cycles as a diplomatic liaison, I'd learned many lessons about interspecies relations. But perhaps the most important was this: never, ever assume you understand humans. Just when you think they're being paranoid, they might just be seeing something you've missed. And if they ever decide to leave only one ship behind again, pay very, very close attention.